It was only 700 supposedly signed up, or 800, right? So.
Okay, so it's 31 after the hour. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Brett Spivey. I'm moderating this session. The title of the session is Time Travel, Distance Education, and COVID-19. Our speakers today are Adam Blythe and Mike Haydick. Did I pronounce that correct, Mike?
Yes.
Awesome. From the North Carolina Department of Insurance. Adam's the GIS coordinator for North Carolina Departments of Insurance in the Office of the State Fire Marshal. He has a master's degree in GIS from NC State and a bachelor's degree in sociology from Western Carolina. He enjoys spending his time hanging out with his two young daughters and playing guitar in a cowboy punk band. Sounds like an interesting title for a session. Mike has been a code enforcement official at local government and licensing and certification program at the Department of Insurance, and is interested in results-based management and an advocate of GIS for problem solving. He got his education with the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and has a BS in ocean engineering and an MPA from NC State. Before I toss it over for you guys to get started, to the attendees that are in here, hopefully by now you've heard this already, but all the sessions at the conference this year are being recorded, so you can give full attention to the session. They will be on our YouTube channel shortly after the conclusion of the conference. Also, too, if you don't mind, in your browser window, hit that chat button and pop that chat window open. And if you have any questions as the presentation is going on, go ahead and send those out. I'll moderate those and we'll do some Q&A at the end. And with that, I'll go ahead and throw it over to you guys. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Brett. This is Mike Haydick. You can see our pictures there. Of course, we can't see any of you, but we've done some of these presentations already, so we'll try and get through the slide material and leave the time for questions and answers. The Department of Insurance, Office of State Fire Marshal, you may or may not know, also does code official training. The building industry in North Carolina is about a $24 billion industry. All of the buildings going up in Raleigh and Charlotte and across the state, they all have to be inspected. Our particular take is that we do education programs. So the community college system is where code officials have to go for a mandatory course. And I've called this time travel, distance ed, and COVID-19 because everybody's interested in time travel, and that's about as exciting as it gets in this presentation at the moment. We have any Doctor Who fans? And Adam says it's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Is that right, Adam?
Yes.
Okay.
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
So what does this slide have to do with the presentation about education? Well, we'll go through a couple slides and then I think it'll become apparent. But building inspectors, right? Who needs them? There's about 4,000 in the state, actually, and they hold something upwards of 9,000 certificates in several different trades. Who teaches them? The community colleges have adjunct instructors that come in and teach a 4 to 6 day class and go through the code books and teaches them all of the code enforcement requirements. Well, how much does that cost? We'll get to that. Glad you asked. So the Code Officials Qualifications Board statute says that nobody can engage in code enforcement, determining whether there's a violation, unless that person is certified by the board. And if you look at North Carolina, you got 100 counties, which are all jurisdictions that do permitting, inspections for construction, and there's revenues that come from the permit fees, and then there's expenses to train the inspectors, both in their initial training and their continuing ed. And there's over 200 cities and counties, which is what makes GIS great, keeping up with everything in the state, sprinkled across the state. And our office at the Department of Insurance is dealing with all those different authorities having jurisdiction at the local government level. So what they have to do by the board rules is they have to get a 70 on any of the courses that are developed by the board and taught at the community college. So there's 5 trades: building, fire, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And then there's 3 different levels in each one of those trades for a total of 15 certifications. And we have a new one coming on board, the residential changeout inspector certificate. So there'll be 16 total. And these levels of certification are based on the building occupancy and use, the size, the height, number of stories, but basically the risk to both the occupants or potential property damage from either what's going on inside of the building or how people egress, or whether they're sleeping in there, if it's a residential building or manufacturing processes. So these courses, now you know more about code officials than you ever cared about, right? But if you try and get a permit for your house, you're going to be very interested in these guys when something gets repaired or to build your new house. So the website for the code officials does, when the courses are scheduled or the board courses, you'll see that there's a date and an address. Okay. And the idea is that you're going to have up to 28, there's 58 community colleges, there may be 28 different schools currently that teach these courses, basically ongoing all year long. And you've got to match up where all those jurisdictions are that those guys are employed with where they're going to go get the training. So we took a look at some data from fiscal year 2018, 2019. There were 192 courses. You can see on this slide the 3 building levels, the counts of the courses. So, for example, I go down that list, building level 1, there were 14 building level 1 courses taught across the state. The total number of students was almost 2,000 students, 1,907. And so average class size of about 10 people. Now, the community colleges don't want to hold courses if there's less than 5 people in a class because there's a break-even point for cost. So let's look at some of these costs. And this is where the time travel bit comes in. It takes time to travel from Raleigh to Asheville if you want to go take a course at a community college there. So I know that's a little bit of a trick or false advertising in the course name, but that's where the time travel comes from. And of course, the distance education is traveling the distance to go to the class or to take that education at a distance in a virtual environment, which we're going to get to. But the cost of the program, if you were to take $30 an hour as an average instructor fee, and you took the number of hours in each of the classes. So here's an example. Level 1 fire is a 36-hour class.
Hey, Mike, yes. I'm going to hold you there. Your slideshow isn't moving, so we need to figure that out.
The slideshow is not moving?
No, it's stuck on that first slide. There you go.
Oh my gosh. So none of that was coming through?
We just soaked it in.
Well, they were such great slides too.
They are. I was wondering if it was from our end, but
well, great.
It happens.
Well, we'll do a recap if we have to, because we're almost there. So yeah, I guess that's the issue. Me advancing. So level 1, a 36-hour course for fire, for example, at $30 an hour for the instructor is going to be $1,000 to pay that instructor. So he needs to have some people in the classroom, right? And okay, now we're advancing, right? So the cost of the program, if you were to take all of the students in the classes, you can start to accumulate the cost to teach all these classes. It's really a lot of money. For a year's worth of courses, it's about $230,000 in that year. So, I mean, compared to some programs, it's not that much. But again, we got a $24 billion construction industry, and we've got a little bit of money that we're spending on courses. So now we get to the GISE part that Adam can also co-host here as I get these slides on. But the local government having jurisdiction, all these orange dots kind of show the size by size, how many students they had that they sent the classes, right? So the larger urban areas have more people. Anything on that, Adam?
No, you got that.
Okay, we got that.
Yeah.
And then the next slide is, it might be a little hard to see, but these are all the community college locations. So that are teaching the courses, and they're all scattered around. Now, community colleges serve the communities. So you would normally think that in your proximity analysis, let's say, that you could go and say, well, gee, what jurisdictions are around Fayetteville, for example, that are going to go to the course there? But I think you can see from the 15 certifications and all these different trades that matching people to classes based on what time they have available and when their certificate's going to run, that's kind of that's a really fascinating moving target. So here's a great shot. These are all the people that went to Davidson County Community College in that year and where they went from across the state. Adam's got the distances with the thematic, the colors for the distances, right?
Yeah.
And but you can see, I mean, you got to go all the way from Kill Devil Hills maybe to Davidson County. That's a lot of people. And you know, we're traveling and spending a lot of time in the car to go back and forth. So what we can do is we can calculate the driving distance. And you know, for example, Davidson had 417 code officials throughout the year. Take that, and that was a total driving of 45,000 miles. You know, you start looking at 60 miles an hour in a car, how many hours and how many days out of the office the guy is spending, right? And down on the bottom of this slide, you'll see building level 1, 2, and 3, and the total number of people, small number of electrical, fire level 1, 2, 3, law and administration, which everybody has to take that, mechanical, and plumbing. For the entire year, we had close to 1,600 people taking the courses and 175,000 miles driving. So if you just do some quick math for costs, you have about 3,000 hours of driving time. If the guy gets paid an hourly rate, or he's $50,000 a year plus a multiplier for benefits, then divide by the number of hours in the office and round trip, you know, you're talking another $200,000 for all the time that the guys are just traveling. And that's not even including the overnight lodging and the fees and all that. Well, guess what happened? Where we made this presentation to the board and said, you know, there's a lot of expense, there's a lot of time, you know, maybe we should offer these classes a different way, and try and get the discussion going to maybe start to do things remotely, or try and get the community colleges to better coordinate in their regions. Now we have the pandemic, and the pandemic comes and says, we're going to close down the community colleges. We're not going to be traveling. We have all these restrictions, but guess what? You know, now we do have the option to teach remotely. So now we've got some classes. Here's one for Johnson County that says the class will meet synchronously online, live version of the class. So for all of the analysis that we were doing and trying to have a you know, evidence-based or just a rational discussion about, gee, maybe we should do things a different way. Now necessity is the mother of invention, and we find that we are teaching virtually. And let me turn it over to Adam, because he's going to tell you some nuts and bolts, right?
Sure. Let me do a quick, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I think you have to stop sharing for me to.
I will do that. I'll be happy to do that, since I don't know how to operate it, obviously.
All right, let me, all right, here we go. You see that, Mike?
Yes, I can.
All right, so I'm going to give you kind of a quick rundown of this dashboard and the functionality, and then just for in the next 5 minutes, just kind of go over some of the nuts and bolts for the folks interested in the GIS behind this. I I really appreciate Mike is a student of GIS. He's been, he kind of, before I came on at Department of Insurance, he was kind of holding down the shop for a little while. So he has an understanding of how important this GIS can be as a tool for decision making. So he knew this was a problem right off the bat that could be solved using geospatial analysis. So this is actually a simplified version of what we originally had, because originally this was just meant for in-house. So the first version was actually quite cumbersome, actually. So we've scaled this down a little bit for public viewing, but the basis behind this, and this is everything unfiltered, but you can, using this proximity analysis, you can use a dashboard to filter that. Okay, this is Davidson County Community College. This is all the different jurisdictions that have driven to the community college. This is how many driving miles total. You can actually go in and then filter individual, like Apex. This is where Apex went that year. This is how many courses they took and where, and kind of how the nuts and bolts behind making that happen. Let me fire this up. Basically, we all started out with Mike exported just a big CSV document from the database, and we had to geocode where all the jurisdictions were located. We ran a proximity analysis. We used the connect origins to destinations method. I went the easy route, and you can do it right there in ArcGIS Online. This is also available to do in desktop. And the really cool thing about that analysis is it'll bring in all the data from, so we're connecting the jurisdictions to the courses. It actually ties in the information from both those data sets, and it brings it into that line, that visual line layer you see. So it actually stores all that, so you can bring it into your dashboard for filtering, which is pretty cool. And then we just created a dashboard based off of that information. And through all that, we're able to filter out what courses were taken. So dashboard's a really good tool to use to say, if you're trying to keep up with who's taking courses across the state or within your community, ways to filter out and see where everybody's coming from. So that's the basic portion of that. But again, just a really cool tool, and Mike had the good foresight to see this as a benefit, GIS a benefit to this project, and it can be used to specifically help steer those decisions, help administration. It's one thing to say that, okay, we have all these different jurisdictions traveling to all these different places, but it's another thing to actually show them something. It kind of brings the point across a little more. So Mike, you want to add anything to that before, I guess, questions?
Yeah, so one thing, the other part about time travel here is that this is all static data from that year in the past. And what I really want is it to be predictive. Okay, now we're not to that point. But the issue, remember, and I'm sorry, I apologize for the slides not advancing them properly for y'all to see, but getting this average of 10 students in a class to get the class to make, when a community college puts its schedule up that it's going to hold a class on a certain date, the students who are going to sign up for it don't know how many students are in that class already unless they call and they say, hey, do you think the class is going to make? So the other information that you could start putting into something like this is, gosh, with the pop-up, right? Who's the instructor? How many people are already set up in this class? Because then we've begun to actually try to solve the problem of, how do you offer the classes to people so that they make, and how do you try and get people to not travel across the state? Well, guess what? If I say that I'm going to have a class at Davidson or Asheville or wherever it is, and I have such and such instructor, and I can put some people who are local into the classroom, and I can teach the rest of the people hybrid, and they don't have to travel from Manio, then we've really got something. Because now, instead of an average class size of 10, you could have 50 people in the class. Okay, so there's all these other things that could happen, but this map interface is just the easiest way to portray it all. Thank you.
So I guess, Brett, we'll go over to, I guess, questions.
Yeah, do you want to go to the last slide?
Oh,
where our
yeah,
emails are, and
yeah, we
and then we can
flip-flopped.
take
Yeah,
Q&A. Yeah.
there we go. Here's our contact information. If you have any further questions after this session.
And the dashboard link there, right? Because they can go play with it
we made that
themselves.
public. Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks, gentlemen. If you'll leave that slide up, Adam, we do have a couple coming in here. One question is, are there any benefits to doing a similar analysis of time and distance for the 4,000 inspectors to the locations of the buildings needed to be inspected? So you kind of turning it on its head and doing a similar analysis for that.
I'm not sure I get the question.
Well, I'll repeat it.
Let me say this. What I think you're asking is, if we said, okay, what class do each of the inspectors need? Then could the community colleges use that information to determine when to give the class? Is that it?
Well, I think what she's asking is doing a time distance analysis for the inspectors to the locations of the buildings that need to be inspected.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's down the road.
Yeah, this is a very limited application to that. And I think just the situation and the project itself lent us to thinking, okay, we need to use something like this time space analysis, whatever you want to call it. But it definitely, I see the applications going far and wide with this. So.
Yeah, and one question I had was, and you may have touched on it when you were talking about showing this to the board, improving it. What was their reaction? Were you able to gauge that they were kind of flabbergasted at the disparity of costs or the inefficiencies of offering the classes, or did you have to use this as a tool to convince them?
Well, I put the tool together as kind of an overall dashboard of the effectiveness of the program. And really, this was secondary to the major problem with the program. And that is that for 3 of the 5 certifications, the building level 1, the fire level 1, and the electrical level 1, the students who are attending these 4 to 5 day courses are only passing the state exam at a 30% rate. And so the problem is that not only is there time and money to send them to the class, which they're passing, but it's not properly preparing them to pass the state exam and convert their probationary certificates into standard certificates. So it's part of a larger issue. But their response was, I don't know who's on the call here. They took it under advisement. Let's just say that.
A nice, safe answer. Well, it sounds like the analyses are just at the tip of the iceberg, and it can go in a lot of different ways. And even at this early stage, I think collectively everybody can see what the value of this is going to ultimately be. So I'd like to thank you guys for sharing that with us this afternoon. Before we jump off, I'd just like to remind everybody on the call or on the session this afternoon that, again, just another quick plug and reemphasize that all these sorts of sessions are recorded, and the conference executive committee hopes to have those on our YouTube channel within just a few weeks of the conclusion of the conference. So be sure and check back for that. And be sure to catch up with Mike and Adam if you have any follow-up questions. And with that, I'd just like to encourage everybody to hit the next session and continue enjoying the conference. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.